Hey y'all, it's Thomas Hendricks with Chrono24 here in New York City. We are sitting down with Chris of the WatchChris channel on YouTube. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already. We sat down previously and went over all the watches that we have here, and boy, do we have some cool stuff. Some Vacherons, some cool personal pieces, some affordable, more diver-esque kind of pieces, old Abercrombie and Fitch, whatever the hell this is. Be sure to check that out as well. Today, Chris, we're gonna have you do a little bit of watch hunting. How are you feeling so far? A little nervous? We're not gonna make it easy on you, I will say that.
I'm a little nervous, I have to be honest. I am a little nervous.
Well, I know your channel features a lot of more affordable pieces as well, which we love. So for our first hunt, I wanna get your thoughts on watches at a few different price points. Let's do 90 seconds each, a 3-watch collection, one under $1,000 in 90 seconds, one under $5,000, 90 seconds, and then one under $15,000. And to time these hunts as well, we have your very own Moon Swatch in the Saturn edition. What do you say, should we jump right in?
Yes, I'm ready.
We are going to put 90 seconds on this clock. Your time starts now.
Okay, so the first watch I'm gonna start with is something that I really love, and it's from a brand that I really love as well. And that $1,000 price point, it's hard to find a watch that really does it all. And I think this is one of the watches that it kind of does everything. This is the Tissot Powermatic 80 version of the PRX. So,
yeah, a fan favorite.
Yes,
for sure.
And let's see here, PRX.
1 minute left.
Ooh,
okay, so you got a couple options here dial-wise. What are you thinking?
Yes, a blue dial for this is great. They recently came out with a green dial. I probably would go with that, but right now that's not available yet, so I would go with the blue dial. However, this is really not my choice. There's another watch that I would think of is Mito. Mito make a lot of really cool watches that are very underrated, especially in the Ocean Star range. And there's the Ocean Star Tribute, which is a watch that I actually own. One of my favorite watches.
30 seconds.
Beautiful
left.
watch, okay. They come in at around under $1,000. You get a lot of polish on here, and that's probably the reason why I wouldn't choose it. The watch that I would choose is a Seiko. I love Seikos. It's something that I talk about on my channel a lot. One of the best right now, I think, is the SBDC 101. Just a beautiful watch, vintage 62 Mas sort of re-edition, beautiful.
Time, done, wow. You timed that really well, Chris. Okay, so we have our under 1,000 choice here. We took a detour with the Tissot, stopped through the Mito and ended up with the Seiko. We'll talk a little bit about this more in a second, but now we're gonna put another 90 seconds on the clock, 5,000 in the bank. Your time starts now.
Again, another very tough price point, but I'm gonna start with a very popular watch, the Tudor Black Bay. I'm gonna say the 58.
Okay, yep, I've heard of this one.
Very popular watch. You can get them for under $5,000. Obviously a lot of inspiration from Rolex.
Yep.
Not my choice, but a really solid choice, I think, in this price range. The next watch that I would say in this price range, and because I love them, Panerai. I mean,
1 minute left. Yeah, what do you think for Panerai?
Panerai, I would go with a Radomir. They make a few different versions, but there is a black seal that I really like. I mean, there's plenty of versions out there. Just the history behind the brand, everything I really like about it.
Yeah, very classy design. Yep.
It's the mill ships for me. Obviously, I have a mill ships. It's, you can get a limited edition, you can get the non-limited edition. They're under, that 5,000, well under that $5,000 range. There's some really cool ones here that we could take a look at. This, I believe, is a non-limited edition.
Left. Let's see what we got.
But this is what I would go for. I would go for the limited edition. This is the non-limited edition. You can get those under $1,000. This is the one that's over 1,000. It's the one that I own. Just a really cool reissue of a military spec watch that actually was never made. Really cool history.
There we go. With a few seconds left, ended up in a very cool place, took some familiar detours, and then, ended up a little bit unexpected. 1 second time, done. Under 5,000, a lot of cool options, and a lot of other ones that we didn't even hit as well.
Yes.
So you've done under 1,000, you've done under 5,000. We're gonna bump you up to the under 15,000. We're gonna go for gold or steel or titanium, ceramic, whatever you wanna do. We're gonna put a minute and a half on the clock, 15K in the bank. Your time starts now.
So I'm gonna start with a watch that I really love, and obviously in this price range, there are a lot of options. I'm gonna start with the Pioneer Center Seconds from H. Moser.
Okay.
And this is a watch that I love because of its versatility, but also the dial. And I'm talking about a stainless steel version here. A lot of them are a little bit on the cusp of $15,000, but this is a really good looking watch that you get a green dial, a blue dial. It's just all about the dial on this watch with that Fume dial.
Yeah.
The next watch on the list, I'm going to say, is the Bathyscaphe. This is a watch that obviously I love because I own sort of a version of it, but this is a beautiful watch that you can get for well under 15,000. In certain cases, there's a 38 millimeter that's my favorite.
7.5 here.
It's really awesome. And a lot of style, and it's sort of a really great all-around daily watch. It's a great daily diver, but the watch that I'm gonna really land on is the Polaris from JLC.
Okay,
the Mariner is
about that.
hands down one of my favorite dials in this sort of category. It's a diver. Obviously, you can see a theme here. I love divers. This has a dual crown setup, that Fume dial. Beautiful, beautiful watch. Really nice bracelet on here as well. Just an incredible watch. And stainless steel, right around $11,000.
Time, done, beautiful, great watch, really cool stuff. Before we do a recap of these, which we will get a little bit more breathing room, I want to have another series of hunts for you. And Chris, I understand that of all the watches you have, this is just a small selection. You do not own a Rolex, is that correct?
I have never owned a Rolex. I can't say that I don't plan on owning a Rolex, maybe in the future, but I have never owned a Rolex. I've just always gone to buy a watch. I've gone to buy Rolexes in the past, and somehow I got distracted by something else.
Yeah, you were telling me about the going to get a GMT, ended up with the Vacheron World Timer. I think there are other examples in there as well. Yeah, what is it about? You get distracted, or is it just kind of a save it for later kind of thing?
It's kind of what I'm about. It's the value for money. When I went to get that Rolex GMT, it was a vintage model. I was trying to get like a birth year model. It was my 40th birthday. I went into a local AD. They were selling it for some sort of extraordinary amount of money. I looked over at the case. They have Vacheron there. It was at a very good price, new, and I couldn't pass it up. I was like, just for a little bit more money, I got a Vacheron. And now, obviously, those are kind of skyrocketing now, but I think I made the great choice and I don't regret it. Do I still want a Pepsi GMT in my life? Absolutely. I think they're cool, but I'm just not, I get distracted very easily. Like I said, it's distraction.
Well, there is a lot of options out there if Rolex is not quite your thing, or even if you don't quite have the funds for those, because they are going up, as we know. So I'm curious to see, let's poke around, see if we can find some alternatives. I'm thinking a Submariner alternative, a GMT-Master alternative, and maybe even a Daytona alternative. No budget really, but let's do a minute and a half for each one. What do you say?
Absolutely.
You want to start with the sub?
Let's start with the sub, sounds good.
All right, we are gonna put 90 seconds on the clock, see what options are out there. Your time starts now.
Okay. This is actually going to be an easy one for me because I think there is one very good, viable sort of alternative to the Submariner, and that is, of course, the Seamaster. The Seamaster is just an incredible watch, and specific Seamaster, in my opinion, is the 300. So that's their heritage model, not the 300M, which is the professional. That's their sort of modern diver. I'm talking about this guy right here. They come in at, I mean, this one is 6400, blue dial. You have that little lollipop. Not a huge fan of that, but everything else I'm a big fan of. They actually went back to an aluminum bezel on this.
Yep.
Beautiful. I have one on my wrist. The one that I have on my wrist today is the 1957 version. So this is a reissue.
Trilogy edition. Yep.
Exactly. It's a limited edition. It's an exact reissue of that original watch. Even gets the little Omega logo in the crystal, sapphire crystal though.
Saw that.
Has the vintage Omega logo. This is it. I mean, it's either between those two, hands down, the best alternative to a Rolex Submariner, in my opinion.
With about 20 seconds left, let's pick one and add it to the list.
I would add this one right here.
Yep, 8700, very capable, really cool styling as well. Let's click the little heart icon right at the top, add it to the list, and we will be got a Submariner alternative in the bank with a few seconds to spare as well. All right, we're gonna give you another minute and a half. We're gonna do a little bit of world traveling right now. Let's talk about GMT alternatives. I'm gonna give you 90 seconds. Let's see where your brain goes. How about that?
Sure.
3, 2, 1, hit it.
So it has to be what is referred to as a traveler's GMT, I think, because Rolex are sort of famous for that, true GMT, right? There are a lot of brands that are starting to make true GMTs. There's a few different brands that have recently come out with them, but I think there's one brand that does it really well, and that is Grand Seiko. And specifically, they make a sport version that does have a rotating bezel with a sapphire crystal insert. And I think it's just a good looking watch. Here's a great example. The two-tone, there is a blue and I think white version.
5,500, and you can do 3 time zones very easily on this watch as well.
Yes, and it's a true GMT if that's something that you're looking for, and you can get them for in that $5,000 to $6,000 range. I think this is a non-rotating bezel. I think I would go with the one with the rotating bezel, sapphire insert, which is loomed, I believe. This is definitely it for me. It's just a beautiful watch. It is on the larger side, so it's 44 millimeters or 43 millimeters, bigger than the GMT-Master, but these wear actually a little bit smaller. You have that crown at the 4 o'clock position, so it doesn't dig into your wrist. It's really well made, just a good looking watch.
There we go, and we'll call it there with about 10 seconds left. Well done. Let's get ready for our third hunt, which is the Daytona series. This is gonna be a bit of a challenge, I would say.
The Daytona is a little bit of a challenge, but when you think about the Daytona, there are some very iconic watches out there that sort of compete with the Daytona that don't get a lot of love.
Well, let's put it a minute and a half on the clock and see what you think.
Yep.
3, 2, 1. I want to see where you go with this.
So obviously, if you're thinking about chronographs, the Speedmaster, and there's like 500 million Speedmasters out there that you can buy.
An unlimited number of limited editions.
And it's insane. A lot of people are getting a little sick about that. But listen, for around that $7,000 mark, you can get maybe the Sapphire Sandwich. It's just a good looking, very classic watch that really can just do anything, go anywhere. Beautiful watch, and it has an iconic look. I would go with that, or I would go with a Chronomaster. The reason why I'm the Chronomaster is it's just a really good looking watch, and a lot of people sort of liken it to a Daytona.
Yep. It's in the El Primero Limited.
Yeah. It's a lot of people went crazy when this watch came out because it looks like a Daytona. Mm-hmm. It has that ceramic bezel. It's kind of the reason why I think it's cool. It's also a 1/10 chronograph, so the second hand just flies around the dial.
Yep.
It's good looking. It has similar looks to the Daytona. It's not a Daytona. It has an El Primero, which you can see from the back, much nicer than a Daytona. This is what I would go for, hands down. It's 10,000 in that range. That's what it goes for.
But compared to a Daytona,
absolutely. And this gives you 99% of what you get from a Daytona for less.
There we go. Well, speaking of chronographs, we have just about 10 seconds left on the clock. 3 really good options that we ran through here. We're going to stop the time, take a little deep breath, pull up your notepad here on Chrono 24 and just see what we got, huh?
Okay.
All right, Chris, we're putting the timer away. It's just you and me just talking about what we got here. We went through a lot, under 1,000, under 5,000, under 15,000, and then did 3 Rolex alternative hunts as well, going through some Submariner alternatives if you don't really want a Submariner, some GMT alternatives, and even some Daytona alternatives as well. We have a few favorites here, including a couple that you own as well, right?
Yes, yes. and some that I want to own.
Yeah.
Most I want to own. I want to basically own every watch, but you know, there's limits. But yes, definitely.
And one cool thing here is your YouTube channel, WatchChris, focuses a lot on value propositions as well. Can you tell me about how that kind of came into play here?
So the reason why Rolex are really hard to get right now is because they're very expensive, right? A lot of people want them, a lot of demand. Obviously, price goes up. There are watches out there that aren't as in demand, but equally as cool, and they have, you know, just as good history and fit, finish, quality, things like that. You know, maybe some not on the level, maybe some even better in some cases. Maybe in the case of the JLC, might be better than a Rolex, right?
Yeah.
So even though they're going for half the price of a Rolex diver or things like that. So that's kind of what I focus on, is the value. So there's value there because they are really well made, or they have specs that are equal to the watch that you want. But these are really very good alternatives that aren't just sort of an alternative, they're actually a replacement.
Yeah, yeah. Peers, let's say, a lot of good, mechanically speaking, very tough, but very elegant as well. I mean, just the dial on this JLC Polaris has a lot of depth, and it's with the internal rotating bezel, you can kind of dress it up a little bit easier, more than a Submariner, let's say.
Yes, yes.
And then, yeah, this the Seiko here, I mean, is another really good example, a very popular diver that does a whole lot. You get the design heritage of the GMT-Master that we were talking about, but for $1,000.
Yeah, and these are really good, durable watches, serviceable. I mean, for $1,000, they look as good as some of the watches that cost $5,000, you know, your Tudor Black Bays and things like that. And you're getting a really good history, watch that came out in the 60s. I think it was Rolex's. I think it was Seiko's first dive watch, and very, very good looking watch. 40.5 millimeters, it's like 41 millimeters, just in that. I have a 061, so an SBDC 061, which is an awesome watch, 44 millimeters. Wears so comfortably on the wrist. These wear very comfortably on your wrist. Just great looking watch, great price.
And speaking of divers, I mean, right now you have on the Omega Seamaster Trilogy. Why did you put your money where your mouth is here for this one?
So I love this watch because, you know, the Submariner is an iconic watch, right? And there are a lot of other brands out there that are sort of equally iconic, I think. And the Seamaster is definitely one of them. Now, there's so many different Seamasters to choose from, and I think the Heritage line from Omega for the Seamaster in particular is just a great place to get, and a watch that is sort of on par with you know, a Rolex with the Submariner, and it's equally as cool. The credentials, everything about the watch, it's well made. Why not look to Omega? Omega's an amazing brand. And the 57, the one that I have, is a Trilogy. That's a watch that actually is sold out, but they do make their regular Heritage lineup, the 300 meter lineup with the very traditional looking Seamaster. Beautiful watch, just beautiful. Capability,
Check. Heritage, check. Build quality, check. And in a world or an office full of Submariners, you're gonna stand out if you have really anything else besides that.
I agree.
Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for going through. This is only a small selection of what we covered. We did a previous video with Chris going through all of this, so check that out as well. Be sure to follow WatchChris on YouTube if you don't already. Chris, thanks so much for coming by.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. It's a lot of fun.
There we go. I'm Thomas Hendricks with Chrono 24 in New York City. We'll have more videos coming to the channel all the time, so stay tuned for those. And as always, enjoy your watches.